telling everybody that I government is shady. But every time I do, my family thinks I'm crazy. The hollow earth, UFOs, aliens invading. Fluoride in the water, they spray our skies daily. When I talk about these things, they think I'm crazy. There's no escaping anymore the evil that we're facing. Illuminati mind control, they're sacrificing babies. The end of days, but anyways, my family thinks I'm crazy.
That I'm crazy. They really think that I'm crazy. They really think that I'm crazy. My family thinks that I'm crazy.
Launch any of them. So I had first 5 done. We were doing it in like January and February. And so it finally launched in March. And then like right after that, I mean like a week after it launched was COVID. So
yeah. Damn.
just weird timing.
Well, let's start recording and get
All right.
into it. Thanks again for joining me, Charlie.
For having me.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, here we are back again on the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast. And joining me for the 5th time, and I've joined him, I think, once on his podcast, is Charlie Robinson, host of the Macroaggressions podcast. And since he's last been on the show, the acquirer and now manager, leader behind Activist Post, which if you haven't checked out activistpost.com, it is a incredible resource and a good way to stay informed. And, you know, with all these alternative spaces being encroached upon, I'm glad to see you, Charlie, taking a corner of this alternative space with Activist Post. So without further ado, welcome back. And tell us about this new position that you have at Activist Post.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. I love Activist Post. That's the reason why they reached out to me. I've been reading articles there for 10 years, and I had been vocal about it, about how I liked it and how I would submit articles. When I was writing my 3rd book, I was taking chapters out of that and I would send it in to the owner of Activist Post and test it out, see how it looked, see how it went with the audience, and stayed in touch with them over the years. And I got a message from them last summer, and they said, we've been doing this for 15 years and we're thinking of doing something new, but we don't want to sell Activist Post to somebody who's just going to like part it out for like the mailing list or, buy just the domain because it's worth something or whatever. We really would like to see it continue going, and we've got to get the right person there for it. And would you be interested in buying the company? And I said, no, because that's crazy. And then I thought about it for about 2 days, and I realized that I had to. I realized that it was such a good fit for what I was doing. Ideologically, they're completely aligned with me. I mean, we feel the same way. It wasn't going to be like I was taking Activist Post away from cooking recipes and changing it into conspiracy or anything like that. I mean, what they were doing was the same sort of things that I'd been doing with macroaggressions and with the books, just in a different format. And so, so I said yes and bought the company in an all Bitcoin transaction and started the process. I mean, I agreed to it in the summer of 2024, but said, let's launch it. Let's wait and finalize everything until the last week of December. We'll do that. And then in the meantime, I'm building out a brand new version of the site because the old one was heavy and it was old and it didn't work well on mobile. And so I wanted to make sure that this one was clean looking, very, not cluttered, and secure and fast on mobile. So we've done a lot of work to it. We built a whole brand new website and launched it on January 1st. So I created more work for myself, which I tend to do. And I'm now the editor, which is fun because I might as well just call myself the DJ, because I get to curate the music. I get to pick what goes on, and like, here's a great story from anti-war. Let's talk about this. Here's Whitney Webb's new article. Let's put that in. Derek Bros has something. I added a podcast section because I think that that's important, because I know that a lot of people don't necessarily sit down and read an entire article. They like to maybe listen and get their information that way. That's cool. I do too. And so we added a podcast section. We added a crypto section because, let's face it, it's a huge component that's not going away anytime soon. And we've got activism on there as well. So there's 8 different categories, but we wanted to make sure that we stayed true to the original Activist Post mission of really promoting activism. So we've got to have one of those categories there. And we've got a lot of news, empire, economy, health, tech. So there's a lot of different, whatever you're into, it's over there. And it's just never going to be censored, because I would be the one censoring it. And I'm certainly not going to be doing that. So it's a place where writers can have their articles, delivered to the general public in a way that won't, they don't have to look over their shoulders. They don't have to edit their articles and think, oh God, what if he reads this and doesn't like this one paragraph that I've got? We're accepting a variety of opinions on things here. And so I think that it's a place that people can bookmark. I didn't build an app for it, and the reason was I didn't want to centralize control into the hands of Apple or Google, which is easy to do. And I watched them do it to Zero Hedge and crush their app and just not approve it. And you spend a bunch of money and do all that. So if you want it on mobile, just open a browser and go to activistpost.com. There's a secondary site that I bought as well called naturalblaze.com, and that is alternative medicine, alternative health. It's a great place if you're, again, it's whenever you talk about these conspiratorial topics, it inevitably leads to health. And the reason that they built 2 sites instead of just one was because of the importance of alternative health, and how it's really a huge driver of where we're going as a society here. We're so unhealthy, mentally, physically, in every way. And Natural Blaze gives you an opportunity to find out, read some articles about health in a way that would nowhere would these articles appear in the mainstream. Like, it's just, there's the sort of stuff I put up on there. There's 0% chance that CNN.com would ever run it. So that's good. That's what I want. I don't want articles that are widely available to the general public. This is where you go to find subversive content that's fantastic and interesting and relevant. And I'll tell you what, man, if you get your news from the people who write articles that I republish on Activist Post, it's like living in the future, because you'll be hearing about concepts and talking and reading about things that the mass media won't cover for a year and a half, if they cover it at all. And when they do cover it, there'll be some slant to it. So you'll hear things and you'll go, oh my God, like, wait a second. I read that on an Activist Post like a year ago. Yeah, right. We're about a year ahead of the mainstream on a variety of topics. So it's a great resource. And when Whitney Webb and Derek Bros and Ryan Christian invited me to be a part of the Independent Media Alliance, I let them know that I was in the process of building out this site. It happened this last summer. And I said, this is going to be a great resource for all of us to have our content played on a platform that's not going to censor it, and it'll be widely available to everybody. So if you're interested in articles from Unlimited Hangout, the Conscious Resistance Network, Last American Vagabond, all those articles, they're all coming on Activist Post as well. So it's a one-stop shop. You can find it all in one place.
That's awesome. Yeah, and especially now with search engines being absolutely unusable, as far as looking up anything related to health, you're just getting a bunch of really nonsense posts from WebMD and all these other pharmaceutical funded sites that just turn you back to pharmaceuticals. Could be anything from, you have a rash, or you're wondering, what the best supplement for hair growth, or I mean, I'm trying to think of examples that don't have anything to do with me, but both of those are things that I recently looked up. So, and I had no really, I had no luck as far as finding something that could be a solution. I did find some information that helped me, but with less and less resources available, it's good to know that Natural Blaze could be a source for specifically that.
Yeah, and you don't have to, you could kind of treat it like a search engine. Where
Mm,
you can go in there and pull up, just there's a variety of categories. You
mm,
can go to one that's like big pharma, if that's something you needed, or um holistic remedies, or whatever. You click on something, and it just pulls up
right.
all the articles that are in that sort of vein. So it's great. And same with Activist Post as well. You can go in there and go, I don't know what I don't know what I need to I'm looking for. I just know it's crypto related. Just click on crypto, and it'll
Mm,
just give you a big drop down of everything that's in there. So you can narrow it down a little bit that way. But yeah, I agree with you. Search engines are garbage. Um, you, the articles that you find there are you have to know exactly what you're looking for, and you have to know the sources. You have to know that these sources are not good. And if you're just a average consumer of information, and you don't really know like what's what, and you just go on there, and you maybe don't even make it off the first page. And that's every single article. If it's health related, it's going to have a big form, a slant to it. So if you're looking for that information, you're going to feel like you're going crazy. You're going to know it's out there, but you just can't find it. And that's frustrating. And that's another reason why I thought that this would be a great resource for all of us to be able to find information, to help, to research things that you're looking for. If you're interested, and you're about to do an episode on technology, like, go to Activist Post, go click on the tech section, go read through all the recent articles that are about technology, and that'll give you some ideas about like what's going on. So there's a lot of ways that you can use this. But if you are just outsourcing your critical thinking to the mainstream media, you're cooked.
yeah. Yeah, and speaking of, the mainstream media has been pretending to cover this JFK file release, but I haven't seen anything substantial from mainstream sources. What I have seen are a couple of the alternative sources taking apart the 80,000 pages or however many documents that were released. And there's definitely some interesting information that I've heard. Have you taken any time to look into the JFK files directly? When I went to the website, I was a little intimidated. I'm like, oh, I'm on whitehouse.gov and I'm about to download all these files directly to my. I'm like, maybe I should wait till I get my above phone laptop to do this. And I just stopped,
Exactly.
you know.
It's Yeah, totally. I was thinking the same thing. No, I didn't do that. I didn't do the deep dive into it. I tell you what I did do. I had I was talking to David Icke on Monday, and I congratulated him on the 30th anniversary of his book, and the truth will set you free, and the truth shall set you free, because it in that book was all the information that they just released on the JFK stuff. And his was out in 1995, so it was a full 30 years
Wow.
that information has been available to the public. If you knew where to look for it, if you knew who David Icke was, if you were interested in these topics, it's all there.
Hmm.
And so I laughed at that, and I had to congratulate him on being so early that people forgot. It was a full generation early that he was writing about this. But I'm not, I never too enthusiastic when the government decides that it's going to declassify some other government form, right? I never believed them. And it's a limited hangout, if ever there was one. They're going to disclose some of it. But eh, as long as people recognize that this is not all of the information that there is about JFK, then fine. I'm glad we're talking about it again. I'm glad Israel's getting dragged into this, as they should, because they were deeply involved in it. I'm glad that people are starting to ask questions that they didn't ask before. But I am not delusional. And I know that the government is not going to release all of the information about how the government was involved in covering up the murder of their president, or involved in the carrying out of the murder, and why these. And David and I had a good talk about Jesus Angleton, and what a bloodthirsty Zionist that guy was, and how he was in charge of the cover up. Like, oh my God, like, yeah, this is a huge red flag. So good. I'm glad people are talking about this, even though I know it's not all the information. In the same way, I'm glad that people are talking about Jeffrey Epstein, even though I know they're not getting all the information in that either. Just the fact that they're having to reconcile with there being a intelligence connected pedophile sexual blackmail entrapment operation that was being run in New York City, Palm Beach, and the Virgin Islands and Santa Fe by a guy who has CIA, FBI, and Mossad ties is good. I'm glad we're talking about it. I'm glad that now that in the public's mind, that sort of thing exists. They know that that's a thing, and that they know that, they might not have all the details, but at least they're in the realm of talking about it. So, like, I'm glad they released the JFK stuff, but I'm also not, I'm not going to pat them on the back for it ever. And this information should have been released before David's book came out in 95, but it wasn't. So, it's tough to take them at their word with anything. Here's the documents on it. Okay, well, as we know, any good disinformation is like 97% truth and 3% lies, just enough to throw you a little bit off, maybe make you think it was this group instead of that group, and the rest of the story be good. So, you have 80,000 pages, doesn't mean they're high quality, and they could all be leading you in the wrong direction. But I'm just glad that people are understanding that, I mean, for what it's worth, Lee Harvey Oswald was not the shooter, and there were multiple shooters, and there was a lot of fuckery that happened with the body in the aftermath, and the footage is all wonky, and the people that were in Secret Service agents, or you can see them on video getting called off of the car, throwing their hands up like, what are you doing? Like, why are you calling me? Why are you pulling me off this? So it wasn't an incredible lapse of judgment. It was made to happen. And I think that the idea that they could murder our president in broad daylight and nobody really know who did it for a long, long time is a testament to how deeply embedded and dangerous this group is, that is willing to, hell, they want you to watch it. They want you to see what happens in broad daylight. They want you to understand that the world's different from that point forward. And so for whatever sort of benefit we can get, I'm glad people are finally talking about it again.
I feel like in what you just said, there's something that I've heard from specifically Michael Hoffman. I don't know how familiar you are with his work. I definitely encourage you to get him on the podcast and interview him yourself. But it seems like the entire JFK assassination event, in a way, was to create the conspiracy culture that we're in right now. And it, like, the double-sworded nature of, yeah, we just killed your president in front of you. What are you going to do about it? That sort of thing. And it's almost like, and again, this is kind of just coming from Hoffman, but he puts it as like an occult initiation, where we're all initiated by experiencing that conspiracy and then going and trying to figure out who did it.
It's like, it reminds me of Pixar movies where you watch them as an adult and you're laughing at, there's almost two movies in one. There's one for the kids, and the kids laugh at some part, and then there's some throwaway kind of line that they mention at the end, and the adults laugh at that because they know that's a reference to something else. So it's the same movie, but depending on your perspective, how old you are and what your what your level of brain development is, you're seeing two different things. And that's kind of how I feel like these events are. So like a 9/11 or a Kennedy or something. On the one hand, the general public gets their version of the film is, oh my God, it's terrible. Somebody killed the president. Somebody those 19 Arab hijackers with box cutters flew airplanes into the building. Oh my God, it's terrible. This is terrible. And then there's a second message being sent, and that's for us, the group that sees through all the bullshit. And that message is, we know that you know that we did it, but there's nothing you can do about it. And we want you to know that. That is the scary part of it. That the role of Israel could be kept out of the JFK assassination for 60 years is just, you almost have to stand in appreciation of their ability to keep it out of the news, diabolical in nature, the things that they have done to make sure people don't talk about that. But nobody talked about that for a long, long time, until it doesn't matter, until Ben Shapiro can say, well, what's the difference? It was a long time ago. So for us that see that, or you see 9/11 and you go, I know you fuckers did that. We've got all the evidence. And the response, the sort of the feeling you come away with after 60 years in the case of JFK or 20 years in the case of 9/11 is, I still know you did it. You still haven't been held accountable for it. And the general public doesn't know you did it yet either. So it's very demoralizing, I think. I think that's not, I think that they're fine either way. If you know it or you don't know it. If you don't know that they were involved, fine. You're just scared to death for the rest of your life that the president might get shot again or that Arabs might take down buildings again. But if you do know it, if you do see through it, then they're fine with that too, because then you know who you're dealing with and you know that you're not going to be able to stop them. And that is a separate kind of message that's being sent. That's the demoralization message of, don't even bother. We're in control of this operation. We have been for a long time. So I think we're in that small group that sees what's going on. And that's why you kind of sometimes feel like the normies just have it right. I mean, they just don't know what they don't know. But like, we know what we know now, and we're never going to unknow it. And for the rest of our lives, we're going to know that nobody was ever put in handcuffs. Nobody who was behind the killing of Kennedy or the taking down of the Twin Towers is ever going to be led away in handcuffs. That is tough to internalize.
Well, and I feel like there's a lot of truth there, but I'm curious to be more exact and precise about who that they is, because it seems like there are contradicting factions at work in the events of JFK's life. We have his father and their relationship with the mob as a family, but then we also seem to have a link somewhere with the Catholic Church. And this is where, in recent conversations, we've sort of spent time talking about the Jesuits and the Vatican and their influence. But I'm curious, where do you stand on, the who's and the what's and where everybody fits in? Because we've heard a lot about the CIA. We've heard about now Israel and the Catholic Church, the mob. There's these really blurry lines between what separates them. And it seems like you're of the opinion that those boundaries don't really even matter because they're clearly working as a unit. What do you think? Is that a
E-
fair assessment?
I always think of these things as a Venn diagram of just interlocking circles where you can be in multiple groups. You can be part of, you can be the CIA and a Zionist. So you can fit in a couple different categories. I think the problem with someone like JFK was that if you drag down all the people, drag down to the police station all the suspects that might have wanted him dead, you've got a lot of people. That's the thing that's what really sort of created the best obfuscation was that when you get to the end of the movie, the who done it, like everybody had motive. Everybody had the the high ranking people inside his military who wanted to go to war with Vietnam, he wasn't enthusiastic about it. He had sent troops, he had sent money, but he was not enthusiastic about doing it. They wanted that. So there was a reason right there. His beefing with the mob and the crackdown on sort of this, the things that his brother was doing as well. Certainly, the mafia has whacked guys over lesser things than that, right? So there's a reason there. They sort of drummed up the anti-Castro Cubans. I don't think that was really much of a thing. I think that was more of a smokescreen. I mean, he was having problems with Cuba. Did they want to murder him? I'm sure they'd love to. Were they actively in the process of doing it? I seriously doubt it. But you, but the group that had the most to lose were the Israeli Zionists. And they were getting hammered on two different fronts, if not more. But one was the Dimona nuclear power plant. And Kennedy was like, that ain't happening. And the second thing was labeling APAC as a foreign lobby, as a foreign agency. And he wanted to do that. And they were definitely against that. And then you take into account who was on deck. Lyndon Johnson was on deck as his vice president. You go, well, who are his allegiances to? Well, he was a hardcore lunatic Zionist, out of his mind by every metric. And so you've got motive and opportunity and a backup plan. And the backup plan is going to do all the things that the current guy wouldn't do, which is get us balls deep into Vietnam and allow the Israelis to steal our nuclear technology and not come down on APAC and make that, let them be an exception and not hold them to the same, like that's all that stuff happened in the aftermath of Kennedy getting his brains blown out. So we know who's behind it. They were the ones that had the most to gain from it. And they're also the ones that you heard the least amount about moving forward. And then you factor in guys like James Jesus Angleton, who's who was described by two Israelis as being as he's more of a Zionist than we are. The guy's like number 2 in the CIA, right, or whatever. And so that's who did it. Like that's who did it. Somebody from their group. And his beefs with the mob. Well, who runs the Italian mob? The Jewish mob with Bugsy Siegel and all those guys. And all of that led back to Kennedy as well. There's connections there. So, if it's a one-off situation, you could, I could understand that you could maybe say like, well, I guess Israel was in a real bad spot. But but then when you go to 9/11 and see Israel's fingerprints all over that as well, now you've got a pattern. And so this is the the part that people like to dance around.